She divorced me for her boss, then I won the F1 World Championship with Ferrari. My wife divorced me for her billionaire boss after telling the world I was a failure. 9 months later, she watched me stand on the highest podium in Formula One, wearing Ferrari red, and realized she had thrown away the man she never believed in. My name is Lucas Moretti, and before I became a Formula One world champion, I was the man everyone had already decided was finished. The funny thing about failure is that people don't just watch you fall. They remember your fall. They talk about it. They use it as proof that they were right about you all along. For years, I was known as one of the most talented young drivers in Formula One. When I was 24, people called me the future of the sport. Commentators said my driving style reminded them of legends. Fans believed I would one day lift the championship trophy. And for a while, I believed it too. But Formula One doesn't care about your dreams. One mistake can change everything. One accident can make people forget everything you achieved before. Mine happened during a championship race in Monaco. I was fighting for a podium position when my car lost control. The crash wasn't just physical. It changed the way people looked at me. Before that day, I was fearless. After that day, every mistake became a headline. Every bad race became evidence that I was losing my ability. My team eventually decided not to renew my contract. Sponsors disappeared. The phone calls stopped. The same people who once wanted pictures with me suddenly didn't recognize me. But there was one person I thought would always stay. My wife, Isabella. We had been together since before the fame, before the money, before the cameras. She was there when I was sleeping in small apartments and driving old cars just to afford another season of racing. She used to tell me something I never forgot. Lucas, I don't care if you win 1 race or 100 races. I'll always believe in you. I built my entire life around those words. Maybe that's why what happened next hurt so much, because the person who knew my biggest dreams became the person who destroyed them. At first, I didn't notice the changes. Small things, the way she stopped asking about my races, the way she spent more time at work, the way she started looking at me like I was someone she had outgrown. I convinced myself it was stress. Her career was growing. Her company was expanding. She was working with powerful people. I thought she was just busy. I was wrong. Her boss's name was Adrian Cross, the CEO of Cross International, a billionaire businessman who had everything I no longer had: money, power, influence, and most importantly, a future that looked better than mine. I first noticed something was wrong during a company charity event. Isabella had invited me because she said it was important for her career. I arrived wearing a simple black suit. She arrived separately. That was unusual. We had always walked into events together. When I asked why she came alone, she simply said, "I had things to handle." I ignored it. Then I saw Adrian. The way they looked at each other told me everything, not because they were holding hands, not because they were doing anything obvious, because they looked comfortable, like two people who already knew they belonged together. I wanted to believe I was imagining it. I wanted to believe my wife would never betray me. A few weeks later, I found out I was wrong. But the way she ended our marriage was even worse. It happened at a company celebration for Isabella's promotion. The event was held in one of the most expensive hotels in the city. Executives, investors, and celebrities were there. Everyone wanted to congratulate her. And I was proud. Even after everything, I was still proud. I watched my wife walk onto the stage. The room applauded. She smiled. She looked confident. Then she started talking about her journey. She thanked her mentors. She thanked her company. She thanked the people who helped her succeed. Then she looked at me and smiled. For 1 second, I thought she was going to thank me. I thought she was going to say I supported her through everything. Instead, she said, "I learned an important lesson." The room became quiet. Sometimes you have to stop holding on to things that are preventing you from moving forward. I felt my stomach tighten. She continued, "I spent years believing loyalty meant standing beside someone no matter what." She paused. "But sometimes loyalty just keeps you trapped." People started looking at me. I knew where this was going, but I still hoped I was wrong. Then she said the words that changed my life forever. "My husband and I are getting divorced." The room went silent. Not shocked silence, the kind of silence where people are waiting to see what happens next. Isabella walked down from the stage. Then Adrian Cross stood up. He walked toward her. And she took his hand. Right in front of everyone. Right in front of me. The man who once told me he admired my racing career looked at me with a small smile, not a friendly smile, a victorious one. Isabella leaned toward him. And in that moment, I understood. This wasn't a decision she made yesterday. This had been planned for months. Maybe longer. She looked at me one last time. "I hope you understand, Lucas." Her voice was calm. "I need someone who can match where I'm going." Then she walked away with him, leaving me standing alone, in a room full of people. The same people who once celebrated my victories, Now watching my biggest defeat, I walked out without saying a word. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I didn't give them the satisfaction. But when I got into my car, I sat there for almost an hour. Because for the first time in my life, I had no idea what I was fighting for. And I didn't know it yet, but losing Isabella would become the moment that finally forced me to find myself again. The weeks after Isabella left were the quietest weeks of my life. Not peaceful. Quiet. There is a difference. Peace feels like you have accepted what happened. Quiet feels like you are still trying to understand it. Every morning, I woke up, and for a few seconds I forgot. Then I looked around the empty bedroom, and everything came back. The divorce. The humiliation. The image of Isabella holding Adrian Cross's hand in front of everyone. I had spent years believing my marriage was the one thing in my life that would never disappear. I was wrong. The worst part wasn't losing her. It was realizing she had already left emotionally, long before she left physically. She had been preparing for a new life, while I was still fighting for our old one. After the divorce became public, my life got even worse. People online had opinions about everything. Some said Isabella was cruel. Others said she was right. They said I was a former athlete who couldn't accept that his career was over. They said I was living in the past. Maybe they were right about one thing. I was living in the past, because every time I looked at an old photo from my racing days, I remembered who I used to be, the driver who wasn't afraid. The man who believed anything was possible. That man felt gone. I moved out of our house 2 weeks after the divorce was finalized. I refused to take anything that wasn't mine. The expensive furniture, the artwork, the luxury items, none of it mattered. Those things belonged to the life Isabella chose. I rented a small apartment outside the city. Nothing special. 1 bedroom, old kitchen, a window that looked toward a parking lot instead of a beautiful skyline. The first night there, I sat on the floor eating takeout because I hadn't unpacked my plates yet. And for the first time in years, I was alone. Completely alone. But something strange happened. After the pain started to fade, I started thinking clearly. I realized something. I had spent years trying to prove myself to everyone. My team, the media, the fans, even Isabella. But I had forgotten the person I needed to prove myself to most. Me. So I started rebuilding. Not for revenge. Not at first. For survival. I woke up every morning at 5. I trained. I studied old races. I watched my mistakes. I started working with younger drivers at a small racing academy. It wasn't glamorous. Nobody recognized me. Kids who were barely teenagers asked me for advice. Some of them didn't even know I had once raced in Formula 1. And honestly, that helped. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't Lucas Moretti, the failed former champion. I was just Lucas. A man trying to get better. But while I was rebuilding quietly, Isabella was living the life she thought she deserved. She posted pictures from luxury restaurants, business events, private parties. She and Adrian became the couple everyone in their world talked about. The media loved them, the successful CEO and the brilliant executive. A perfect match. At least, that's what they wanted everyone to believe. I saw one interview where a reporter asked Isabella about her new relationship. She smiled. I think sometimes people stay in situations too long because they're afraid of change. She didn't say my name. She didn't need to. Everyone knew who she was talking about. For a moment, I felt the old anger return. The part of me that wanted to prove her wrong. But then I turned off the television because I understood something. If I rebuilt my life only to make Isabella regret leaving me, then she would still control my life. And I refused to give her that power. Months passed. Slowly, I started feeling like myself again. Then one afternoon, something happened that changed everything. I was at a small racing facility outside the city. I had been helping a young driver prepare for a competition. After the session ended, I stayed behind and watched another race on an old monitor in the office. It was the Italian Grand Prix, a race I used to dream about winning. Ferrari was struggling badly that season. Everyone knew it. The team had talented engineers, incredible history, and some of the best facilities in the world, but something was missing. The car was fast, the drivers were talented, but they weren't getting results. I watched the race carefully. Then I noticed something, a mistake, a strategy decision that everyone else missed. I grabbed a notebook and started writing. The tire choices, the weather changes, the way the car was behaving. Without realizing it, I started thinking like the old Lucas again, the driver who saw things before everyone else. The driver who trusted his instincts. The young racer I was training looked over. "Are you still analyzing races?" I smiled. "Always." He laughed. "Why? You're not even racing anymore." That sentence hurt because it was true. I wasn't racing anymore. But maybe I wasn't finished. The next morning, something unexpected happened. I received a phone call from an unknown number. Normally, I ignored calls from numbers I didn't recognize, but something made me answer. Lucas Moretti? Yes? This is Marco Bellini. I froze. Marco Bellini was one of the most respected engineers in Formula One, a man who had worked with championship-winning teams. How did you get my number? He laughed softly. People in this sport talk, more than you think. I waited. Then he said, I watched your analysis from yesterday. My heart started beating faster. You saw a problem nobody on television noticed. I didn't know what to say. Lucas, I have a question for you. A long pause followed. Do you still want to race? I looked around my small apartment, the place where I had spent months trying to accept that my career was over. I thought about Isabella. I thought about Adrian. I thought about everyone who believed I was finished. Then I answered. Yes. The word came out before I could even think. Marco was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Good, because Ferrari may need you. My entire body froze. Ferrari. The name every driver dreams of hearing. But I knew better than anyone. Dreams don't come true because you want them. They come true when you're ready to fight for them. And Ferrari wasn't calling me because they believed I was a hero. They were desperate. One of their drivers had been forced out unexpectedly. They needed someone experienced, someone who could handle pressure, someone who understood racing at the highest level. But there was one problem. The entire world thought Lucas Moretti was finished. And Ferrari was about to find out if they were wrong. The call from Marco Bellini changed everything. But it didn't magically fix everything. That is something people don't understand about second chances. Getting the opportunity is the easy part. Proving you deserve it is where the real battle begins. 3 days after that phone call, I arrived at Ferrari's headquarters in Maranello. I had been there before. Years earlier, I had walked through those same doors as one of the most talked about young drivers in the world. Back then, cameras followed me. Fans waited outside. People believed I was the future. This time was different. Nobody was waiting for me. Nobody was excited. I walked through the building carrying a small bag, and most people looked at me like they were asking the same question. Why is he here? I couldn't blame them. They had seen the headlines. They knew my recent history. To them, I wasn't Lucas Moretti, the talented driver who almost became a champion. I was Lucas Moretti, the driver who disappeared. The test day was private. No media, no fans, just engineers watching every move I made. The car sat inside the garage under the bright lights. A Ferrari, the same symbol that had inspired millions of people. I put on the racing suit and looked at myself in the mirror. For the first time in a long time, I felt like myself again. But when I got inside the car, reality hit. The first few laps were terrible. My hands felt unfamiliar. My timing was off. The speed was there, but the confidence wasn't. The engineers watched silently. Every mistake was recorded. Every hesitation was analyzed. After the session, I walked back into the garage disappointed. I knew what they were thinking. Maybe Isabella was right. Maybe my best days really were behind me. Then Marco walked over. He looked at the data. You are fighting the car. I looked at him. What? You're trying to drive like the old Lucas. He pointed at the screen. But you're not the same driver anymore. I didn't understand, he continued. The old Lucas relied on pure speed. The new Lucas needs to rely on experience. Those words stayed with me because he was right. I had spent months trying to become the person I used to be. But maybe that wasn't the answer. Maybe I didn't need to go backward. Maybe I needed to become someone better. The next test was different. I stopped trying to prove I was still young. I stopped chasing impossible lap times. I focused on understanding the car, the tires, the conditions, the small details other drivers ignored. And slowly, the old feeling came back. Not the same feeling. Something stronger. After several hours, the engineers started looking at each other. The room that had been quiet suddenly became full of conversations. One engineer walked over to Marco. His race intelligence is incredible. Another said. He understands the car better than some current drivers. I didn't celebrate. I knew one good test meant nothing, but it was the first time in years that people looked at me and saw potential instead of failure. A week later, Ferrari made the announcement Lucas Moretti would return to Formula One as a temporary replacement driver. The reaction was immediate. Some fans were excited. Others laughed. The media had a field day. Ferrari's desperate gamble. Has Lucas Moretti really returned? Former star gets unexpected second chance. And of course, Isabella saw it. I know because she called me. For months, she hadn't contacted me unless it involved paperwork. But that day, my phone rang. Her name appeared on the screen. I stared at it. A part of me wanted to answer. A part of me wanted to hear what she had to say, but another part remembered standing alone in that ballroom. Remembered her holding Adrian's hand. Remembered the way she looked at me like I was already a stranger. So I let it ring. A few minutes later, she sent a message. Congratulations. I heard about Ferrari. I always knew you had talent. I read it, then I deleted it. Because the truth was simple. She didn't believe in me when nobody else did. She believed in me when the world started believing again. And those two things were not the same. My first official race back was one of the hardest moments of my life. The lights went out. The engine screamed. And suddenly, I was back where I belonged. But this time, I wasn't racing for fame. I wasn't racing for approval. I wasn't racing to prove Isabella wrong. I was racing because I loved it. The first few laps were difficult. The younger drivers were aggressive. They didn't respect my reputation. And honestly, they shouldn't have. A reputation doesn't win races. Performance does. But by the middle of the race, something changed. I started reading the race. The way the cars moved. The way the tires reacted. The way opportunities appeared before they became obvious. The same instincts that once made me special returned. On the final laps, I made a move that surprised everyone. Not because it was reckless, because it was intelligent. I passed two cars using strategy instead of pure speed. When I crossed the finish line, I finished fourth. No podium, no trophy. But inside the Ferrari garage, people celebrated like we had won. Because they understood what that result meant. Lucas Moretti was back. After the race, a reporter asked me, "Lucas, many people thought your career was over. What does this result prove?" I looked at the cameras. I thought about the man I had been months earlier. Broken, embarrassed, lost. Then I answered, "It proves that being knocked down and being finished are two different things." The quote spread everywhere, including Isabella's world. And for the first time, she started to realize something. The man she left behind wasn't gone. He was rebuilding, and she was about to watch him become everything she said he never could be. After my first race back, everything started moving faster. A few months earlier, nobody wanted my name attached to their team. Now, suddenly, everyone had an opinion about my comeback. The same journalists who wrote that I was finished were now asking if I could win another championship. The same people who laughed at me were suddenly saying they always knew I had something special. That is the strange thing about success. People often remember believing in you, even when they didn't. But inside Ferrari, I knew the truth. One good race didn't change anything. I still had something to prove. Every practice session, every qualifying lap, every single corner. I had to earn my place again. And there was someone inside the team who reminded me of that every day. Her name was Sofia Ricci. Sofia was one of Ferrari's lead performance mechanics. She wasn't the type of person who cared about celebrity. She didn't care that I used to be famous. She didn't care about my old trophies. To her, I was just another driver who needed to improve. And honestly, I respected that. The first time we met, she didn't even smile. I walked into the garage after a difficult practice session. The car felt different. Something wasn't right. Most people would have just looked at the numbers. Sofia walked around the car quietly. Then she looked at me. "You are pushing too hard." I looked at her. "Excuse me?" She crossed her arms. "You are trying to prove something." I laughed. "Isn't that what every driver does?" "No." She shook her head. "The best drivers don't try to prove they are great. They trust that they are." Nobody had spoken to me like that in years. Everyone around me either treated me like a legend or like a failure. Sofia treated me like a person, and that was exactly what I needed. Over the next few weeks, we worked together constantly. She studied every detail of my driving. The way I entered corners, the way I managed tires, the way I reacted under pressure. But she also noticed things nobody else did. She noticed when I was doubting myself. She noticed when I was carrying the weight of my past. One night after a long testing session, I stayed behind in the garage. Everyone had left. I was looking at old photos on my phone. Pictures from when Isabella and I were younger, before everything changed. Sofia walked past and stopped. "You still think about her?" I quickly locked my phone. "It's not what you think." She smiled slightly. I didn't say it was. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she said something I never forgot. "You know what your problem is, Lucas." I looked at her. "You think losing her was the moment your life fell apart?" She looked around the Ferrari garage. "But maybe it was the moment you finally stopped living for someone else." Those words stayed with me. Because deep down, I knew she was right. For years, I had measured my value by other people's opinions. My fans, my team, my wife, everyone except myself. Sofia never tried to save me. She simply reminded me that I was capable of saving myself. And slowly, I started changing. Not just as a driver, as a person. Meanwhile, Isabella's perfect world started falling apart. At first, I didn't care. I wasn't following her life anymore. But people talk, especially when things go wrong. Adrian Cross, the man she left me for, started facing problems. His company was losing money. Investors were asking questions. The image of the perfect billionaire started cracking. Then rumors started spreading. Adrian had never planned to leave his wife. Isabella wasn't his future. She was just part of a temporary fantasy. The same man who promised her everything suddenly became distant. The same man who made her feel chosen suddenly made her feel replaceable. One evening, I received a message from an old friend. It was a picture from a business event. Isabella was standing alone. No Adrian, no smile, no confidence. Just a woman realizing the life she destroyed her marriage for wasn't what she imagined. I looked at the picture for a few seconds. Then I put my phone away. Because the truth was, I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel angry. I just felt nothing. And that was when I knew I had finally moved on. My life was no longer about Isabella. It was about what came next. And what came next was bigger than I ever imagined. The season continued. Race after race, Ferrari improved, and so did I. I wasn't the fastest driver every weekend, but I was becoming the smartest. I learned when to attack. I learned when to wait. I learned that championships aren't won by one perfect moment. They are won by surviving every difficult one. By the middle of the season, something unbelievable happened. I was fighting for the championship. The same man everyone called finished was now challenging the best drivers in the world. But the hardest race of my comeback was still ahead. The championship finale. Everything came down to one race, one decision, one chance. Before I entered the final race weekend, Sophia found me alone near the Ferrari garage. You know what I find funny? I smiled. What? A year ago, everyone thought you lost everything. She looked at me. But they were wrong. I looked toward the car waiting for me. Why? Because they thought you lost your career. She smiled. But you actually lost the thing that was holding you back. I knew exactly what she meant. Isabella, the old version of me. The need to prove myself. The fear of failure. I had lost all of that. And now I had one final race. One final chance. Not to show Isabella she was wrong. Not to prove the critics wrong. But to prove something to myself. That Lucas Moretti was never finished. He was only beginning. The final race weekend arrived faster than I expected. A year earlier, I was sitting alone in a small apartment, wondering if my career was truly over. Now I was standing inside the Ferrari garage, preparing for the biggest race of my life. The championship was within reach. But nothing about it felt easy. The pressure was everywhere. The media followed my every move. Fans debated whether my comeback was the greatest story in Formula One history, or just a temporary moment. My competitors didn't want to see a comeback story. They wanted to win. And I understood that. Nobody gives you a championship because your story is inspiring. You earn it. The morning before the race, I walked through the paddock alone. I saw young drivers laughing with their teams, engineers making final adjustments, fans wearing Ferrari colors. Everything around me reminded me how far I had come. A year ago, I thought my life was ending. Now millions of people were waiting to see what I would do. Before I entered the car, Sophia walked toward me. She didn't say anything at first. She just looked at me. What? I asked. She smiled. Nothing. That usually means something. She laughed. I was just thinking about the first day you came here. I smiled. When everyone thought I didn't belong. Exactly. She looked at the Ferrari beside us. Funny how things change. I put on my helmet. Whatever happens today. She interrupted me. No. I looked at her. Don't say that. I was confused. Say what? Whatever happens, she pointed toward the car. You didn't come this far to accept whatever happens. She stepped back. You came here to win. Those words stayed with me. The lights went out. The race began. The first few laps were chaos. Everyone knew what was at stake. Cars fought for every position. Every mistake could end a championship dream. I stayed patient. That was something the old Lucas wouldn't have done. The old Lucas wanted to win every corner. The old Lucas thought every battle had to be fought, but experience changes you. I understood that a championship wasn't about one moment. It was about making the right choices over and over again. Halfway through the race, I was in second place. The championship leader was ahead of me. The gap was small. The pressure was enormous. Then the weather changed. Dark clouds appeared. Rain started falling across parts of the track. The radio became full of voices. Some teams were preparing to change tires. Others wanted to stay out. Nobody knew the right answer. My engineer came through the radio. Lucas, we need your opinion. I looked at the track. The rain wasn't heavy enough to make the decision obvious. It was a gamble. A mistake could cost everything. A correct decision could win the championship. I thought about all the years I spent trying to prove myself, all the criticism, all the doubt, all the moments when I was afraid. Then I remembered something Sophia told me. Trust yourself. I answered. We stay out. There was silence. Then my engineer replied. Are you sure? I looked ahead. Yes. The next few laps were the hardest laps I had ever driven. The car was difficult to control. Every corner required complete focus. One mistake, one small mistake, and everything would be gone. But something inside me felt different. I wasn't fighting the car anymore. I wasn't fighting my past. I wasn't fighting Isabella's opinion. I was simply driving. The rain became heavier. Other drivers struggled. Some entered the pit lane. And suddenly, the decision started working. The Ferrari came alive. The same people who doubted me were now watching me pull away. With 10 laps remaining, I took the lead. The crowd exploded, but I didn't celebrate. Not yet, because I knew the race wasn't over. The final lap arrived. I heard the Ferrari team on the radio. Lucas, bring it home. I looked at the final corners ahead. A year ago, I had nothing. No team, no wife, no future I could see. Now I was seconds away from becoming world champion. I crossed the finish line. For a moment, everything went quiet. Then the radio exploded. We did it! We are champions! I removed my hands from the steering wheel. I closed my eyes, and I finally allowed myself to feel it. I had done it. Lucas Moretti, Formula One world champion. The same man everyone had buried was standing at the top again. The podium ceremony felt unreal. The trophy was heavy in my hands. The cameras flashed. The crowd cheered. But the person I thought about wasn't Isabella. It wasn't Adrian. It wasn't the journalists who doubted me. It was the younger version of myself, the kid who dreamed about racing. The kid who believed impossible things could happen. I looked at the championship trophy and smiled. Because I finally understood something. Winning wasn't about proving everyone else wrong. Winning was about proving I never should have given up on myself. Later that night, after the celebrations ended, I received a message from Isabella. For the first time in months, I opened it. It said, "Congratulations, Lucas. I saw the race. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I'm sorry." I stared at the message. A year ago, that apology was the thing I wanted more than anything. I wanted her to admit she was wrong. I wanted her to understand what she had done. But now, I didn't need it anymore, because the man who needed that apology was gone. I placed the phone down, and I walked outside. Sophia was standing near the Ferrari garage, looking at the empty track. She turned around. "You okay?" "Not really." "Yeah." She looked at the trophy in my hand. "You finally did it." I shook my head. "No." She looked confused. "What?" I smiled. I finally became the person I was supposed to be. For the first time in years, I felt completely free, but I didn't know one thing yet. The championship victory wasn't the end of my story. It was the moment when the people who abandoned me finally had to face what they had lost. Winning the championship changed everything, but not in the way people expected. People thought success would make me angry. They thought I would finally get my revenge. They thought I would use every interview to talk about Isabella. They were wrong. Because the biggest victory of my life wasn't holding the trophy. It was realizing I no longer needed anything from the people who once broke me. After the championship celebration, my life became something I never imagined. Everywhere I went, people recognized me. Fans who once forgot my name now wanted pictures. Companies that ignored me years earlier wanted partnerships. The same newspapers that called me finished were now calling my comeback one of the greatest stories in sports history. But I noticed something. The people who celebrated me after I won were not the same people who supported me when I had nothing. And I never forgot that. A few weeks after the championship, I returned to Maranello. The Ferrari headquarters felt different. Not because the building changed, because I changed. The first time I walked through those doors, I wondered if I belonged. Now, I walked through them as a world champion, but the person who made the biggest difference wasn't sitting in the VIP section. She was in the garage. Sophia. She was still the same person. Still focused. Still honest. Still the only person who treated me like Lucas instead of a trophy. One evening, after everyone left, we stood outside the garage watching the sunset. "You know," Sophia said, "a lot of people think winning changed you." I smiled. "Did it?" She looked at me. "No." She paused. "It revealed you." I didn't say anything. Because she was right. The championship didn't create a new Lucas. It brought back the Lucas I had lost. The one who believed in himself. The one who didn't need anyone's approval. Meanwhile, Isabella's world was falling apart. At first I didn't hear much. I didn't follow her life anymore. But eventually, the news reached me. Adrian Cross was facing serious problems. The company that made him powerful was struggling. Investors were leaving. His perfect image was disappearing. And then the truth came out. Adrian had never planned to build a future with Isabella. To him, she was just someone who made him feel admired. When things became difficult, he did what people like him often do. He walked away. The same man she left me for became the same man who abandoned her. The irony was almost impossible to ignore. The woman who once told me she needed someone better was now learning what it felt like to be replaced. But I didn't celebrate. I didn't laugh. I didn't feel satisfied, because I had spent too much time being hurt by her to waste my future thinking about her. Then one day, I received another message. This time, it wasn't a simple congratulations, it was a request. Can we talk? Just once. Please. I knew immediately who it was. Isabella. I stared at the message for a long time. A year ago, I would have answered instantly. A year ago, I would have wanted explanations. I would have wanted her to tell me why she did it. Why she humiliated me. Why she chose someone else. But time changes the questions you ask. The things that once kept you awake stop mattering. I agreed to meet her. Not because I wanted her back. Not because I missed her. Because I wanted closure. We met at a quiet restaurant away from the cameras. When she walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. Not because she looked different. Because she looked tired. The confidence was gone. The arrogance was gone. She sat across from me. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, she said, "You look happy." I smiled. "I am." She looked down. "I watched the championship." "I know." She swallowed. "I was wrong about you." Those words were the words I once dreamed of hearing, but they didn't have the power they used to. I simply nodded. She continued. "I thought you were finished." "I know. I thought you would never become the person you used to be." I looked at her. "Isabella, that was the problem." She looked confused. "What?" "You were waiting for me to become someone else." I paused, but I wasn't trying to become the old Lucas. I smiled slightly. "I became someone better." Her eyes filled with regret. "I ruined everything." For a moment, I felt sorry for her. Not because I wanted her back, because I realized she would have to live with her decision forever. She had traded something real for something that only looked perfect from the outside. "I hope you find peace," I told her. She looked surprised. "That's it?" I nodded. "What else is there?" She looked at me like she was searching for the angry man she remembered. But that man was gone. The man sitting across from her was someone she couldn't hurt anymore. "I miss you," she whispered. I took a breath. "I miss who you used to be." That sentence hurt her. I could see it, but it was the truth. The woman I loved had disappeared long before our marriage ended. I stood up. "Take care of yourself, Isabella." And I walked away. No anger, no revenge speech, no dramatic ending. Just peace. Outside, Sophia was waiting for me. She looked at my face. "How did it go?" I smiled. "Exactly how it needed to," she nodded. And together, we walked away. Because the greatest revenge wasn't making Isabella suffer. It was building a life so incredible that losing me became her biggest regret. And the best part? I didn't need her to regret it anymore. I had already won.